Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Financial Fix with Charnella. Today, I want to talk about a real important topic, and this is for all the young people and anyone who's interested in attending college. College is can be a great experience, and it can definitely be necessary for those of us who want to improve our education levels so that we can get better jobs. But one thing I want to caution some of the young people, something that they may not be thinking about, and that is the expense of their education versus the career choice that they're making. Now, sometimes the cost of the education far outweighs what you're going to be earning with the career that you choose. So I think the most important thing for young people to think about, and anyone again who's thinking about returning to college or going to college for the first time, not only should you look at going into a career where you're interested in that career, it's something that you can find yourself doing for the rest of your life or even for 10, 20 years, right? Because you're going to be spending probably tens of thousands of dollars on a college education. And so, what I want you to think about is before I spend tens of thousands of dollars on an education, first of all, am I going to come out liking the work that I'm doing? That's the first thing. Number two, what's the salary? Okay. Salary is important. Why do we go to school? To better ourselves and educate ourselves. We do that so that we can earn a living. And depending on the type of living that you want to earn, um, you have to choose what career that's going to be, right? So let's give an example. You have someone who goes to school to become maybe, I don't know, a nurse. Okay. Now, if when you come out of school as a nurse, say perhaps you're going to make maybe 60,000 a year starting off. Okay. This is just hypothetical. But you've spent 50,000 on your education. Well, we have to think about that now, right? You're going to spend $50,000 on your education to come out earning $60,000 a year. $60,000 a year isn't bad, but let's add up the costs here. So the cost of your education is $50,000. You'll likely have to get student loans, which you're going to have to pay those student loans back at a rate of about 6%, sometimes as much as 8%. So anywhere between 6 to 8%. So on $50,000, 6% is about $3,000 in interest for the first year, roughly. Okay? So you come out thinking, wow, I'm going to make $60,000. But think about this. Something that young people don't think about is you're going to have to pay the IRS their taxes. You have to pay federal, and in some states like Michigan, you have to pay Michigan tax. So if you're making about 60 grand a year, at least 20 to 24% of it is going to go into taxes, right? So now you're making 60 grand a year. You're paying the federal government at least 20% in taxes. So that's about 12,000 right off the bat gone. Then you take off another couple of grand for your state tax. So now you've got 14,000 subtracted from 60,000. And sometimes that isn't the most attractive number that you end up with. So now you're down to somewhere around $46,000 a year that you're going to be that you're going to live on. So the average person is going to spend about $1,400 a month in Michigan for a two-bedroom apartment, a decent two-bedroom apartment. So when you're looking at a budget, you've got 46,000 left over after you finish paying your taxes. Now you haven't even begun to pay off debt, but you've got the 46,000. It's probably going to cost you, like I said, about $1,400 if you're living in a decent two-bedroom apartment somewhere. Then you've got to pay for your maybe one or two utilities. Maybe some of the utilities are included. In most places, heat and water is included. Um, but if all of your utilities aren't included, then whatever utilities you have to pay for, in addition to that rent, may cost you another $50 to $100 a month. Then you've got your food expense, right? Food is pretty expensive right now. Then you might have a car note, car insurance, and then renter's insurance. So by the time you're done with all these expenses, not including your cell phone bill and your internet bill, and if you've got streaming services or cable, you're paying for some sort of streaming service to watch Fun TV. So when you finish with all these expenses, you're likely going to be in the neighborhood of $3,000. So from that $46,000 that's left over after paying taxes, you now have to add in $3,000 just for living expenses, which is going to equate to about $36,000 a year. Okay, so now you subtract 46,000, you subtract 36,000 from 46,000, and now you've got $10,000 left over to pay back your $50,000 debt plus interest, anywhere between 6 to 8% each year. And you have to think about saving and investing. And you might want to go on a vacation. 10 grand doesn't go far. So, what am I saying? I'm saying that college is a necessary expense, but you really have to determine, especially for those of you who will be coming out of school with a bachelor's degree, making $40,000 or $50,000 a year. You might want to rethink what career you're going to choose, because you have to look at how much that career is going to you're going to earn in that career. You also want to pay very close attention to your expenses in regards to your college costs. Do I want to live on campus, or can I maybe just live at home and attend a school in my state? Find a really good school in your state so that you can commute to school. I know that it's inconvenient, but you know what? When you're paying for convenience, as a student, you may think, okay, I'll just go ahead and rack up all these bills. I'll go ahead and live on campus. I'll pay an extra 7 grand a year living on campus. So if your college education is 10 grand a year, that's $40,000 if you're going for 4 years. If you add on another 7 grand, man, that's another $28,000. Do you really want to come out of college $68,000 in debt? Really think about it. Because I think most people, because the money isn't directly coming out of a checking or a savings account, or they're not directly having to pay that cash up front, it's almost like a credit card. Buy the education now, pay for it later. And most of us have to go that route. But do we really have to spend as much money as we think we need to? That's what I want you to do. I'm not saying don't go to college. I'm not saying don't spend the money. I'm saying think very carefully about how to get your education wisely. Can you apply for more grants and scholarships? You do have to pay for your college education, but do you have to go to that school that charges 40 grand a year for education? Or can you go to another school that maybe is a public school as opposed to a private school that will give you a great education and you still come out making the same money? Because one thing I want you to think about it, you can go to a school where you have to pay 20 or even 25,000 more per year, but is going to that school going to earn you 20 or 25,000 more per year with that particular job? Of course you have to go to a reputable school. I'm not saying don't go to a college that doesn't have a good reputation, but I'm saying there's tons of colleges out there with great reputations that are more reasonably priced. So please really think about it, because how many years would it take you to pay off $50,000 in debt if you're only able to pay off 5 grand a year? You're talking minimally 10 years or longer, because you have to add on the interest that you're going to pay in addition to that initial principal balance that you borrowed. So for young people and for anyone that's thinking about going back to school, weigh the cost and determine for yourself if the education if the money that you're thinking about spending on your education is actually worth the education that you're going to be getting. What I'm saying is, don't just look at a career simply because it seems like fun. You have to really determine, when I come out of school, am I really going to make the kind of money that's going to provide the lifestyle that I want? Really think about it. So parents, remember, please teach your children to think very carefully about the expense that they're going to commit themselves to. Help them think about the debt that they're putting themselves in when acquiring an education. Again, I'm not saying don't get the education, but I'm saying really think carefully about the expense. So please also let me know what you all would like to hear from me. What additional topics would you like for me to cover? Thank you for watching Financial Fix with Sharnella, and I will see you on the next episode. If you like what I'm saying, please like and subscribe.